In the 12th year of the era of conquest, the ground at the northern strait began to shake violently, not due to an earthquake, but by the rhythmic footsteps of a massive army from the Eastern Empire. Dust billows up, obscuring the midday sun, stretching for dozens of miles like a giant earthen dragon slithering to swallow all life. Before them lies the only solitary road leading into the heart of the Western nations, a narrow pass sandwiched between vertical cliffs and the roaring sea, where the width is barely enough for 2 chariots to pass. At the most critical choke point of the pass, a strange sight appears, in complete contrast to the sea of people on the other side of the battle line. Only exactly 300 warriors stand in a horizontal line, blocking the way. They carry no brilliant flags nor noisy battle drum orchestras. All are clad in crimson cloaks, the color of dried blood, hands gripping spears over 2 meters long and shielding bodies with large round bronze-plated shields. The silence of these 300 men drowns out the growling of tens of thousands of enemy troops piling up in front. Not one of them trembles. The eyes hidden behind enclosed helmets exude only coldness and steely discipline. From the Eastern Grand Army, animal horn trumpets blow wildly, signaling the monarch's patience has run out. A commanding general rides a horse to the front of the ranks, loudly inducing surrender, promising gold and power to anyone willing to lay down arms. Answering his words is only the absolute silence of the sea breeze and the sound of waves hitting the cliffs. 300 spears lower simultaneously, creating a forest of sharp spikes, filling every gap of the narrow road. Feeling humiliated by the stubbornness of the small group, the order to attack is immediately issued. The Empire's vanguard archer corps, numbering in the thousands, simultaneously draw their bows. When bowstrings are released, the sky suddenly darkens. Thousands of pitch-black arrows soar high and then pour down like a deadly rain shower. However, the formation of 300 men below does not break rank at all. They simultaneously raise shields high, interlocking them to create a sturdy bronze dome. The sound of arrows striking metal surfaces rings out like hail, thousands of iron tips shattering or bouncing off harmlessly against the thick armor. Meanwhile, behind the curtain of arrow rain, the Empire's first light infantry units have begun to charge. They are soldiers equipped with wicker shields and short axes, relying on overwhelming numbers to crush the opponent. Their wild shouting echoes throughout the canyon, creating a terrible psychological pressure. But as they rush close to the shield wall, they realize their fatal mistake. In this narrow space, the quantity of tens of thousands becomes meaningless. Only those standing in the first rank can engage in combat. And there, they must face the most perfect killing machines of the ancient world. The distance narrows gradually. 10 meters, 5 meters. Then the first collision explodes like thunder. Long spears from the shield wall thrust out at terrifying speed, piercing the thin leather armor of the attackers before they can swing their weapons. Blood begins to stain the gravelly ground red, marking the beginning of a prolonged slaughter. The collision between the 2 army blocks creates a jarring sound, as if the mountain itself is groaning under the weight of iron and flesh. The Empire's light infantry, poorly equipped with cloth tunics and woven wicker shields, immediately realize the fatal error of facing a solid bronze wall head-on. They rush in with ferocious spirit, but the moment they make contact, hundreds of bodies are instantly skewered by sharp, long spears coordinated with terrifying rhythm. In the narrow space, only about 15 meters wide, the numerical advantage of the attacking side completely disappears. The spears of the defensive guards extend like the fangs of a monster, creating an inviolable zone of death. The Imperial troops in the first rank fall immediately, but the stream of people behind, vision obscured and driven by rapid battle drums, continues to surge forward. They trample on comrades' corpses, slipping on pools of fresh blood, only to rush headlong into the very spears that just took the lives of those before them. Behind the shield wall, the defensive warriors operate as a single living machine, emotionless and without superfluity. The first rank holds shields firm. The second rank rests spears on the shoulders of the first to thrust. The third rank presses shoulders tight against comrades' backs to increase pushing power. With every deep, heroic chant, the entire formation presses forward one step in unison. The sound of shattering bones, breaking wood, and screeching metal sounds ghastly. Their thrusts are precise and cruel, aiming straight for the enemy's throat or armpit, places unprotected by armor. Meanwhile, in the center of the attacking army, chaos begins to spread. The vanguard soldiers realize they are being pushed into a meat grinder, but cannot retreat because tens of thousands behind are still pressing in. They are clamped tight between the cold shield wall and the stream of pushing allies. Many die of suffocation or are trampled before even touching the opponent's weapons. Blood begins to flow in small streams, winding through rock crevices, staining red the foaming ocean waves roaring at the foot of the abyss. At the same time, on a high observation rock, Imperial generals watch in shock as their wave of people breaks like sea foam. The light infantry, once the pride of battles on vast steppes, has now become completely useless. Not an inch of ground is gained, only corpses pile higher into a dike blocking the canyon. As the sun begins to slant towards afternoon, pressure from the attacking side decreases. Sensing the opportunity, the defensive formation suddenly widens gaps between shields for a split second, delivers decisive thrusts, then simultaneously rams with shield faces. The resonant pushing force from hundreds of rippling muscular men flings the Empire's remnants tumbling backward. Hundreds of enemies roll down the slope or fall straight into the deep sea. The first attack wave is completely crushed, leaving before the guards a battlefield strewn with corpses, yet their ranks remain intact, without losing a single man. Fury engulfs the Empire's main camp as they witness the first wave of attack vanish like smoke and dust. Giving the opponent not a moment of rest, battle drums resound again, this time far more rapid and heavy. Tens of thousands of main force troops, equipped with bronze-scale armor and cold sharp curved scimitars, are ordered to surge forward like a broken dam. They trample upon the very corpses of their comrades to advance, turning the already rough ground into a swamp sodden with blood and crushed flesh. However, the cruelty of the narrow battlefield once again backfires on the attacking side. The number of corpses from the previous wave piles up knee-high, creating an artificial dike blocking the path. Instead of clearing it, the Empire's troops madly rush over, causing their footsteps to stumble and lose momentum. Conversely, the defensive guards have utilized this very gruesome obstacle as a terrain advantage. They step onto the piles of corpses, standing a head taller than the enemy, turning the defensive stance into powerful downward thrusts. The skirmish turns into a cramped and suffocating nightmare. The Empire's troops are compressed to the point of being unable to swing swords. Their weapons tangle in neighbors' armor or get stuck in bodies underfoot. Meanwhile, the long spears of the defensive side operate rhythmically like breathing. Every time a spear retracts, fresh blood sprays profusely, and every time a spear launches, another enemy falls into the mess below. When the strength of the first rank begins to wane, a brief but steely command rings out from behind the shield row. In a split second, the defensive formation executes an unbelievably perfect rotation technique amidst the storm of battle. Warriors in the front rank, armor stained red from head to toe, simultaneously step back one pace through narrow gaps. Immediately, fresh comrades in the second rank step up to fill the positions, raising shields high and continuing the killing momentum without missing a single second. This rhythmic rotation makes the steel wall look like a monster that never knows fatigue. On the other side, fear begins to creep into the minds of the Empire's soldiers. They see not the enemy's faces, only emotionless eyes behind iron helmets and deadly spears launching regularly. The front layer falls to become a foundation for the next, causing the wall of corpses to grow higher, narrowing the combat space to just a few meters. Blood flows through rock crevices, mixing with dust to form a sloppy, slippery mud, causing many Imperial soldiers to slip and be trampled to death by comrades behind before reaching the opponent. When the last sunlight of the day extinguishes behind the mountain range, tens of thousands of the Empire's main forces are forced to retreat in shame, leaving a mountain of bodies sprawling to block the entrance. The group of guards remains standing there, silent as stone statues, weapons still gripped tight in hand, ready for the crueler things to come tomorrow. A terrifying silence envelops the canyon as the first rays of the new day touch the cliff peaks. The ragtag army of the previous day has been ordered to retreat, making way for the Empire's greatest pride, 10,000 Royal Guard Immortals. Unlike the noisy crowd before, this army advances in absolute silence. They are clad in jet-black dragon-scale armor, faces completely hidden behind iron masks, cast in beast shapes, hands holding dual swords or shiny crescent battle axes. No shouting, only the sound of rhythmic footsteps shaking the ground as these 10,000 killing machines loom into the death zone. Upon approaching the shield wall, instead of rushing in like moths to a flame, the guards skillfully dodge, using weapons to hook opponents' spear shafts to yank or chop them. Their superior fighting technique immediately takes effect. Dozens of the defenders' long spears are neutralized or shattered in a blink, forcing the guards to draw short swords from their waists to engage. The battle shifts to its most brutal phase. Close combat at a distance of no more than an arm's length. The narrow space of the canyon turns into a suffocating slaughterhouse. The Empire's guards, accustomed to flexible and flamboyant fighting in open spaces, are now jammed tight. Their agility becomes meaningless when there is no room to turn or dodge. They are forced to face head-on the brute force of heavy bronze shields. The defensive warriors, with muscular builds and heavier armor, turn their bodies into living weapons. They use shield faces to bash straight into iron masks, use helmets to headbutt enemies, and thrust short swords dangerously into armpits or groins. The sound of metal grinding screechingly, bones shattering, and heavy gasping breaths blend together, creating a symphony of death. In the chaos, many warriors on both sides discard weapons to wrestle, strangle, or use rocks to bash heads right on the bloody ground. Although individual skills of the Empire's guard are extremely excellent, they lack the synchronous coordination of a unified bloc. They fight as solitary individuals, while their opponents fight as a single entity with hundreds of heads and thousands of arms. The guards' attack waves keep shattering against the steel-disciplined formation. Bodies of those wearing iron masks begin to pile upon bodies of regular soldiers, but this time, intermingled are corpses of the first defensive soldiers to fall. Blood from both sides blends together, flowing profusely underfoot, making the ground slippery like grease, turning every move into a potential final step. As pitch-black night descends upon the strait, the Empire's retreat horns sound mournfully, signaling the end of the second day of fighting. The Royal Guard Immortals, the invincible pride that flattened dozens of kingdoms, now retreats sullenly to the rear. The jet-black dragon-scale armor is now dented and shattered. Beast-shaped iron masks are slashed open, revealing faces full of fear and exhaustion. They leave behind not only thousands of comrades' corpses, but also the legend of immortality, shattered before the shield wall of the death-defying defenders. The battlefield at the canyon now looks like a scene from hell. Corpses pile up higher than a human head, forming chaotic mounds blocking the narrow passage. Blood has coagulated into dark patches covering the ground, raising a pungent stench, mixing with the smell of sweat and rusting iron to create a nauseatingly stifling atmosphere. Crows and vultures begin circling in the dark sky, awaiting a giant feast of human flesh. Meanwhile, in the Empire's vast main camp, an atmosphere of mourning and panic blankets the myriad troops. Rumors begin to spread fast like a plague within the fabric tents. Soldiers whisper that those guarding the strait are not mortals, but ghosts risen from the earth, who know no pain and never die. The eyes of tens of thousands of soldiers look toward the pitch-black canyon in fear, no longer with the burning morale of their arrival. High-ranking generals frantically kill deserters as a deterrent, but their own hands tremble when holding wine cups, helpless before the inexplicable stalemate. In complete contrast to the chaos on the other side of the line, at the blockade in the canyon, disciplined silence reigns. The surviving defensive warriors do not cheer or celebrate victory at all. They silently drag comrades' bodies to a solemn corner, bandaging each other's wounds with strips torn hastily from cloaks. Those with strength left utilize the darkness to repair the ramparts. They drag enemy corpses to stack them, wedging in boulders and broken wood, reinforcing the wall of flesh to prepare for the next day of death battle. Under flickering firelight, calloused hands sharpen sword blades, straightening bent spear tips. They share dry bread crusts and meager water, eyes still staring steadfastly into the darkness where the enemy hides. No heroic speeches, only nods of signal and tacit understanding among seasoned soldiers. They know well that, though having repelled the strongest attack, death still hovers overhead, and tomorrow's dawn might be the last time they see the sun. When the night is at its densest, around the third watch, the stalemate of the war is suddenly broken by a fatal discovery. A group of local scouts, lured by gold and silver filling 3 wagons, revealed to the Empire's generals a secret trail. This path was originally reserved only for mountain goat herds and veteran hunters, winding across sheer vertical cliffs, circling the perilous mountain slope to lead straight to the back of the defensive blockade. Immediately, a cold command is issued in the darkness. 2,000 elite soldiers of the light infantry, experts in night combat and climbing, are separated from the main army. They strip off heavy noise-making armor, wearing only dark leather tunics, carrying short swords and ropes. This ghostly army begins to move in absolute silence, tailing one another, crawling up the cliff like a giant snake hunting prey. The path is terrifyingly narrow, one side a vertical, slippery, mossy cliff, the other a bottomless abyss. The night wind howls overhead, lashing the intruders' faces, trying to push them into the abyss. In the dim darkness, not a few soldiers slip, falling straight into the pitch-black void without time to scream a single sound. Bodies shattered at the bottom of the abyss, hundreds of meters deep. But the remaining ones do not stop. They step over the gap of the fallen, gripping tree roots and sharp rock ledges, continuing to climb with iron determination. After nearly 4 hours of wrestling with death on the cliffs, the raiding army finally touches the cloud-covered mountain pass peak. From this position, they can look down at the valley below, through the dense fog layer. Faint campfire light from the defensive guard's position appears tiny and fragile, like a candle before a storm. The defensive soldiers below, exhausted after 2 days of continuous fighting, are still guarding carefully at the front, completely unaware that the scythe of death is slowly descending right behind their necks. The raiding army begins to pour down the rear slope in a scattered formation to avoid making noise. They move gently through thorn bushes and sparse forest, tightening the encirclement. When the first grey ray of the third day's dawn begins to kindle on the horizon, 2,000 Empire soldiers have completed deploying a semicircular formation, locking tight the only retreat route of 300 brave warriors. The deadly pincer formation has formed, turning the narrow canyon from an impregnable fortress into a giant stone coffin. As the early morning mist has not yet dissolved, war horns signaling the siege sound harshly from both ends of the canyon, tearing apart the cold silence of dawn. The defensive warriors, already exhausted after 2 sleepless nights, now realize they have fallen into a fish in a trap situation. In front of them is an endless sea of people of the main grand army rumbling forward, while behind their backs, the only escape route has been sealed by 2,000 light infantry troops, just pouring down from the cliffs. There is no wailing or panic-induced rout usually seen in surrounded armies. Instead, a chilling calmness blankets the small group. Commanders issue orders with decisive gestures, and the horizontal formation, inherently impregnable, immediately transforms. From the horizontal line blocking the pass, they quickly cluster together, soldiers on the 2 wings backing up gradually, curling up to create a closed fighting circle, back to back, facing outwards opposite the forest of swords and spears on all sides. At the same time, the Empire's battle drums resound rapidly like rolling thunder, signaling the final general offensive begins. From the front, tens of thousands of heavy infantry carrying large shields stomp forward simultaneously, creating a giant wall of pressure, compressing the narrow space. From the rear, the mountain-climbing troops with lighter but more agile equipment rush in to attack brutally, trying to tear apart the fragile defensive formation from the back. The skirmish explodes immediately, with an unprecedented level of ferocity. Bronze shields now must endure blows from all directions. On the front face, guard warriors still hold the steel wall firm, using long spears to thrust through gaps of the rushing enemy. But at the rear face, the situation is doubly dangerous. The Empire's raiding army does not fight head-on, but continuously harasses, throwing short javelins and boulders into the formation, then rushing in to slash at the legs of the defensive soldiers. Blood begins to pour down faster than ever. The defensive circle shrinks a little more every moment as each soldier falls. When a warrior in the outer row collapses from exhaustion or injury, immediately the person standing inside must step out to fill the spot, making the formation's central core increasingly thin. There is no room left for methodical rotation tactics. Now only survival instinct and the will to fight to the last breath remain. In the chaos of dust and clashing metal, the defensive soldiers still fight like beasts cornered against a wall but full of pride. They no longer fight to hold ground or to survive. They fight to make the enemy pay the highest price for their lives. Corpses of the Empire's troops begin to pile into a dike ring around the death squad, so high that later attackers must climb over comrades' bodies to touch swords with opponents. But no matter how resilient, human strength has limits, and the deadly encirclement is tightening every inch of ground beneath their feet. When the sun stands at its zenith, shining straight down into the bloody valley, the Empire's generals realize that destroying these stubborn men with swords and spears is costing too many of their own troops' lives. A strange, shrill, and prolonged whistle sounds from the main camp. Immediately, the surrounding infantry fighting madly suddenly retreat in unison, creating a deadly empty space about 50 paces wide around the remnant defensive group. A sudden silence envelops the battlefield for a few breaths, leaving only the heavy gasping of the defensive soldiers. But that quietude is merely an omen for the true storm. From high cliffs and from behind the infantry ranks that just retreated, thousands of the Empire's archers and javelin throwers step out. They arrange in multiple layered rows, drawing bows and winding up, turning the entire surrounding space into a giant shooting range. A simultaneous whoosh sounds out, tearing through space, sounding like a giant silk cloth being ripped apart. The sky above the canyon immediately darkens due to a pitch-black cloud of tens of thousands of arrows and sharp javelins. No place left to dodge, no dead angle left to hide. The rain of steel pours down on the heads of the defensive soldiers with such density that not a single gap is missed. The bronze shields, already dented and cracked after 3 days of enduring axes, now cannot withstand this long-range destructive power. The sound of arrows thumping into wood, piercing thin bronze, and worse, the sound of metal tearing flesh, rings out continuously. The most seasoned warriors, who never retreated before any sword, now fall bitterly unable to swing a weapon in return. They are pinned to the ground by dozens of arrows, turning bodies into living targets. The defensive circle formation shatters in large chunks. Those still standing are forced to tighten the circle further, using comrades' bodies as ramparts. But that effort becomes hopeless before the ceaseless arrow rain. The armor on them, no matter how solid, begins to show deadly gaps. Blood flowing from arrow wounds dyes red everything remaining of the blockade. The first volley just ends. Before survivors can recover, the second volley arrives. This time, it is heavy, short javelins, launched with terrible force, capable of piercing both shields and armor. The sound of breaking bones and bending metal rings out ghastly. The number of standing guards drops rapidly. From over 100 at dawn, now less than 40 figures stagger amidst a forest of arrows, leaning on each other not to fall. They are no longer an army, but merely ruins of resilience, awaiting the final finishing blow. As the final rain of arrows ceases, the atmosphere on the mountain pass becomes eerily silent. The large, round shields, inseparable objects that once formed the legendary bronze wall, are now just twisted metal fragments, bristling with sharp arrows like porcupine quills. Realizing they no longer serve as protection, the few score warriors still gasping for breath cast that final burden to the ground. They stand there, no formation left, no intact armor, hands gripping chipped daggers or jagged broken spear shafts. From 4 sides, the roar of the Empire's grand army resounds again, this time carrying contempt and cruelty, wanting to crush these stubborn ants. Thousands of soldiers with shining swords and spears flood forward like a flash flood, believing they will easily trample the exhausted remnants. But they were mistaken. What awaits them is not resignation, but the final frenzy of wild beasts cornered. The skirmish explodes without any rules or techniques. Guard warriors rush straight into the dense enemy mass, disregarding defense. When daggers break, they use bare hands to strangle, use rocks underfoot to smash enemy helmets. Some defensive soldiers, though pierced through the abdomen, still use their last strength to pin down the opponent, creating a chance for a nearby comrade to deliver the finishing blow. The battlefield turns into a chaotic swamp of blood and mud. No more command voices, only the screaming of primal survival instinct. A guard warrior with his left arm severed still rushes to shoulder bash an Empire soldier down, then tears at the enemy's throat with his teeth like a wild wolf. That ferocity and stubbornness cause the attackers, though overwhelming in numbers 100-fold, to flinch for a moment in horror. However, bravery cannot forever resist the law of numbers. For every guard falling, dozens of Empire swords hack down. The circle narrows until no space remains. The last warriors are pressed together, crushed under the weight of layer upon layer of enemies. They do not fall due to lack of skill, but are buried by that very endless sea of people. When the last warrior collapses, pierced by dozens of spears in the back, simultaneously, he does not turn to flee but falls forward, toward the enemy. His body lies atop the corpses of invaders, hand still gripping the weapon, pointing toward the Empire's monarch. There, the final resistance has extinguished, leaving a heavy silence blanketing the canyon, where the blood of 300 men has merged with earth and stone to erect an invisible monument. The thick smoke and dust of the final battle begin to dissipate with the sea breeze, revealing a scene so naked and devastated that even the Empire's most weather-beaten generals shudder. The narrow canyon, once an open gateway, has now completely transformed its terrain. The ground is no longer visible. Instead, a chaotic carpet of flesh and bone stretches for hundreds of meters. Corpses of 20,000 attackers lie strewn, piled upon each other, intermingled with bodies of 300 defenders, creating a gruesome ruin, blocking the path between cliff and abyss. The Empire's grand army, though having won the final victory, makes no cheering nor triumphant horn sounds. A heavy and gloomy silence blankets the entire army. The lead soldiers are ordered to clear the battlefield to open a path, but their hands tremble when touching the bodies of the fallen enemies. On the faces of those corpses, though deformed by wounds, a ferocity and indomitability still etch deep, terrifying the living. It takes them half a day, using levers and the strength of thousands of pack horses, to push the piles of bodies to the roadsides, creating a narrow passage just enough for the king's chariot to roll. When the gold-plated chariot of the monarch passes the newly erected wall of flesh, he silently looks down. Not a word is spoken, but the monarch's eyes shine with astonishment mixed with deep insecurity. To capture a narrow strip of land, not exceeding 10 miles, he had to trade the lives of nearly half the vanguard force and the honor of the most elite royal guard. This victory tastes bitter, with ash and bloody gore, bringing no glory like what is recorded in royal chronicles. The grand army of 50,000 continues marching through the canyon to enter the fertile western lands, but the initial burning morale has cooled. Every soldier stepping past where those 300 warriors fell bows his head, not daring to look straight, as if fearing the souls of the death-defying ones are still lurking somewhere in rock crevices, ready to rush out and take their lives. The thundering footsteps sound monotonous, lacking heroic rhythm, resembling a giant funeral procession more than a conquering march. After the silhouette of the Empire's last soldier disappears behind the pass's bend, the canyon returns to its eternal silence. Only the wind whistling through rock crevices sounding like mournful wailing remains, and ocean waves crashing at the cliff base, washing away drying bloodstreams. At the site of the fiercest battle, a large rock stands solitary against the sky. On it, though no carver's hand touched it, slash marks and densely stuck arrowheads have self-carved a most majestic tombstone. The story of 300 men stopping an army of 10,000 needs no books to record, for their very blood and bones have merged with the earth and stone here, turning this deadly canyon into an immortal legend, reminding the world of the price of freedom and the power of human will.